Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the UnCalled Foursome. We have a great show planned for you tonight. We are honored to have Jenni Morgan and EiE Heretic with us to help discuss this most serious topic, the Incel terrorist movement. And as a note, we are not generalizing. We are just talking about the ones who have committed these crimes. And we want to thank you all for your support, and we want to thank you all for coming tonight. Ilya?
Yes, thank you, Aimee. And as Aimee said, I want to mirror, sorry, pardon me. This week has been quite emotional going through these stories, and tonight it really got me before the show, especially watching the clips that Bull put together and what we've put together. It's just kind of got me, so pardon me if I sound a little choked up. But yes, I want to mirror Aimee's sentiment. Not all incels are terrorists. Not all terrorists are incels. We are specifically looking at a group of people who have committed terrorist behavior in the name of being an incel. So let me make that clear. Also, as you can tell, since I'm choked up, trigger warning, or this is going to be a very sensitive show. So just be prepared, and we're glad you're here. With that said, let's do a round table. Hi, Glober Mommy. I'm so glad you're here. It's always nice to have Mom around on tough days. So how are you, and what's going on in your world?
Doing good. Just same old, making videos and dealing with stupid men sometimes. But, it's life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I'm so grateful to have you by my side here tonight as we dive into this very serious and sensitive topic. Sometimes, when the struggle is very real, it's you ladies who help get me through. So
yeah, we're happy to do it. We're happy to do it.
SciStrikeling, what's going on with you, honey?
Well, howdy, y'all. I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight. Not a whole lot new going on. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's prepared for us tonight.
Awesome. We love having you here. Vishanti, our newest panel member that has changed us from the UnCalled 4 to Foursome. How are you tonight, and what's going on in your world?
Just enjoying being alive as much as possible, just making do with what I got. And yeah, lots of research this week, lots of paper and essays and articles. So it's gonna be very informative tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. And now we also, before I get to our guest, I want to check in with Aimee. Aimee, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing good, thanks. Doing good so far. It's been an uneventful week here, just getting things ready for the next shows and stuff, and taking care of Matt. That's all.
Absolutely. We love our Matt. And while we're on you, we did get a super chat. Would Matt like to take care of that real quick?
Sure, Maddie, honey. Oh, okay. Well, I guess not. So,
I'm joking.
Okay.
I was joking.
Okay. Gonna have
April Fools. Crack tequila for 2 years. A big love to all the at the EiE Network tonight. Heart emoji.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
we appreciate it.
And just also a heads up, if you are triggered by tonight's episode, or if you are in the chat and you feel like some of this resonates with you and you need help, Crafty Keela will be posting a website that literally has every country with every hotline available that you can go to, find your country, and you're able to then find hotlines or support that you need. So she will be posting that throughout the night. So if you need help, if you need someone to talk to, whether it be the suicide prevention line, rape assistance, or if you're just struggling, period, mentally, that's a wonderful place to go and get some help. So now let's talk to our guest. We have the one and only Aimee Heretic, who is a part or a co-host of the Dutch Heretic channel, who has been on the EiE Network before as part of the Silly Shills show. So welcome to the first, welcome your first time on the EiE Network, Aimee. How are you tonight?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing okay. So I know that you and Dutch Heretic have some things that you guys do throughout the week. I know that you guys have a Thursday chat in your Discord and then some other things you do on Saturdays. You want to kind of talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so we do, we try and remember, both of us, between the two of us, sometimes remember, sometimes we don't. So we try and get to a Thursday chat on around about midday for Central, early afternoons for the East Coast. And then every month we have two things that happen. We have a video that comes out, and every other weekend, every other Saturday we have a live stream. We've just had our second one yesterday, so it seemed good. It was a good stream. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation, and yeah.
Wonderful. And you can definitely go and sub to Dutch Heretic's channel. One of the mods, if you can grab that link and put it in the side chat so everybody knows the link to Dutch Heretic's channel, go subscribe. He has great content. His animation is beautiful when it comes to their premieres about space and what they talk about. It's very nicely put together, so definitely give them a sub. And thank you for joining us. And we have the one and the only person to be on for the third time with us, ladies. We have the one and only Jenni Morgan. Hi, Jenni.
Hi, Ilya.
So I just have to tell y'all, when I posted the other day on Twitter what tonight's episode was going to be about and how serious it was, she actually reached out to me and asked to be on. So, you want to tell me a little bit why you wanted to come on tonight and be a part of this special episode?
Well, with this most recent news story that we've had of the shooter, it's real clear that Incel has taken a very nasty turn, and it made me very frightened. And so I just wanted to get on and be around and hear the people who I know took the time to do homework, which I don't. and offer commentary, but mostly learn some stuff.
Sure.
And I'm always up for saying nasty things about Incel because it's such a bad situation anyway. But this makes it extra worse. And, and it is very scary.
It is very scary. And you know, like Aimee and I had mentioned at the beginning, we are not trying to suggest that anyone or everyone who is an incel is a terrorist, nor are all terrorist incels. But it is important that we call a spade a spade. And in the stories we're going to get into tonight, you will see that some of these heinous acts that have caused death and despair are self-proclaimed incels. And they did it in the name of being an incel. So let's call a spade a spade. And that's what tonight is going to be about. And that's what we are planning to present to you tonight. So with that said, we have a short video clip that we're going to show. And then we have some PowerPoint presentations. Rather than going through every single news article, because there were a lot, Vashanti and myself took the time and split up. We divided and conquered, if you will, part of the topics and created some PowerPoints with some stories that we're going to kind of start to go through and talk about the dynamics and the mentality of each situation. And then, we're just going to take a look at it overall and how this has turned so violent so quickly. So, Bull, if you want to, go ahead and let's look at this video.
Actually, just before we do, we have a real quick super chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Steve,
Thank you.
yes, Steve McGray for $2 said, "Have to support the ladies." Happy
Aw.
face.
That's right. Thank you so much.
We love
Steve.
you.
Appreciate
Thank you
that.
so much. All right, Bull. So let's watch this video. Now, this video is an informative video. It is not a video of an incel, so this is not going to be something we put and laugh at. This is an informational, educational type video. So let's get into it, Bull.
9 people have been killed, 16 more injured in a van attack in Toronto.
The suspect is 25-year-old Alec Minassian.
The suspect had praised an American mass killer on his Facebook page and expressing anger towards women.
Alec Minassian was praising the heroes of the incel community. Incel stands for involuntarily celibate.
A lot of it is just a symptom of being an ugly dude who can't get laid.
It's a movement that exists largely online. Big blogs, forums, things like that. The involuntarily celibate essentially blame things like feminism, women's empowerment as something that is denying their kind of God-given rights to have sex with women. This isn't a small universe. There have been estimates that some of these forums have had, around 1 million people in them at times. When you read the postings there, it seems like aggrieved late teens and early 20s white males who are basically having difficulties with, modern day dating. What's concerning is you have these people who are vulnerable and probably could use support, positive support.
I like not being able to see what I look like in the camera.
Nobody wants me around. I'm a fucking reject everywhere.
Then being influenced by people who replace those kinds of feelings not with genuine empathy, but with anger and rage.
What happens is that, when you're a young dude, really, and you're not really accepted anywhere, then you just go and do, crazy shit. It's happened, all throughout history, I guess.
The case of premeditated mass murder.
Just 10 minutes of terror in Isla Vista, right near the campus of UC Santa Barbara.
Enraged over his lack of luck with women.
Until Elliot Rodger, we hadn't really seen that domestic terrorism that targets women specifically because people are living in these incel forums.
I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires. All because girls have never been attracted to me.
He was a hero, for example, to the Toronto attacker and other people in this movement. They call him the Supreme Gentleman. He was extremely misogynistic and incel, but he also had some extremist beliefs about race.
And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut. All those girls that I've desired so much. So many beautiful blonde-haired girls walking around everywhere. This beautiful blonde girlfriend. Hot, beautiful blonde girls. 2 beautiful blonde girls.
There is, without a doubt, a bleed over between incel communities, the men's rights movements, and factions of the alt-right. Today's white supremacists, if they call themselves, to be part of the alt-right, are misogynistic in a way that white supremacists just a few years ago were not. It used to be the case that neo-Nazis and those kinds of really extreme anti-Semites and racists put women on a pedestal. Members of today's white supremacist movement are total misogynists.
We have a serious phenomenon among Western women where once they reach the age of perhaps 28 or 30, they begin to develop serious psychological illness.
There's a lot of examples of alt-right leaders who started with hating women and then eventually came to hate Jews, black people, and so on and so forth. It's all sort of been brought together, and these movements are bolstering each other, right? People will work across them, be a white supremacist and an incel and a men's rights activist. That's what we're seeing going on right now.
So, as I stated, that was very much a quick educational video on, on what we're about to talk through. And she hit the nail on the head. A lot of these people need help. We are not coming on here tonight to point and laugh. We are coming on here tonight as 7 women and a bull to talk through how sad it has become that we have allowed mental health to take such a back seat that it literally fosters this type of behavior. So, any comments on the video we watched before we start diving into our PowerPoint presentations where we've taken these articles and kind of condensed them down to talk through?
Yeah.
I'd like to say men like this have always existed.
Yes.
It's not just a recent thing. And they have to blame others. It doesn't matter who they are because they can't deal with whatever life throws at them. So it seems like it's never, you know what I mean? And they can't take responsibility for their own actions.
Right.
It's my opinion, of course. So, yeah, so these men have always existed. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something else that we're going to kind of get into is not just the history of things now, but also the part that internet plays in helping to like foster these ideas and fan the flames of them.
Exactly. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Jenny, what were you going to say?
I would like to start out with entertaining the definition of terrorism. There seems to have been a lack of commitment to that as a concept of what's going on. The American Heritage Dictionary would define it as the use of violence or threat of violence against civilians in the pursuit of political goals. Now, of course, this is social goals, not political, although I suppose social is political nowadays.
Yeah.
I think it fits perfectly. It's surprising it kind of took this long to become a physical event to me.
Yeah. It's violence, and it's violence with a purpose, and the purpose in these cases is to inspire fear and to also exact retribution for what they feel is a slight.
Right.
And actually, I want to change it up just a bit, Bull. Before we do the first PowerPoint, if you could, why don't you go ahead and throw that Roosh V image up from his Twitter, and let me talk about the story of this guy really quick, and then we'll get into the PowerPoints. So the story behind this guy, the reason I didn't include him in the PowerPoints is he has not actually committed a crime yet. This is just one of his tweets from 2018 that I pulled from one of the cited stories that I looked into. The underlying theme in the incel message boards, which can be readily found in 4chan and Reddit, obviously, is that the current sexual marketplace gives women too much freedom to choose their partners, and it leaves men feeling cheated out of their sexual quote-unquote birthright. Some incels say that denying them of sex, women are committing reverse rape, which they argue is just damaging and is as damaging and harmful as actual rape. Roosh V is one of these men who has now made it his life work to take it to legislation and legalize rape. We are not talking about somebody who is sitting behind a keyboard just saying a bunch of words. He is actually currently trying to make rape legal. He is trying to take it to legislation that women should be sexually available to men at all times for any reason without any argument. And this is a quote from one of the stories I read where he was interviewed. And this is the quote. "Make no mistake that this is a war against heterosexual men. This is a war of our generation. This is a war against men who are presumed guilty at birth and whose innocence is mere purgatory until a newly devised outrage sends them to hell. You are the enemy, and you will denounce in the form of misogynist, creep, and sexist. And this denouncement will stay with you and affect your livelihood in ways modern technology allows. You will be prosecuted by the fattest and ugliest cunts of the land with no hope of appeal." Roosh V, quote from the article, "The War Against Men." This is the behavior that can turn violent very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's just one article that he's done.
And how many read that and believed him?
How many are praising him for his stance?
Yes.
Lifting him up on a pedestal like, yes, let's, you know, that's the problem. That's why we're doing this conversation tonight. It's not a fun conversation. This is a hard topic.
Yeah.
I have spent hours this week combing through articles, talking about this, pouring my heart and soul into getting the correct information for you guys, because I don't want to mislead anyone. I don't want to generalize, and I don't want to hurt innocent people. But there are innocent people literally who have been killed in the name of this movement.
Men and women.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he said it himself, if you don't actively promote the idea of women as objects that are just there to, be for your sexual pleasure, then they consider you an enemy. So even if you're a man who treats women with respect and decency like your fellow human beings, they consider you someone that they're fighting against.
So England, who we saw in that video clip, he was the neo-Nazi with the shaved head standing up reading about how women, when they get to about 28, become, what verbiage did he use? Mentally insane or whatever he said. I don't remember exact verbiage, but he actually is quoted saying, "Women crave men who call them stupid and claim they shouldn't have rights. They also claim being tied up, beaten, and raped." Look, I hate women, and I think they deserve to be beaten, raped, and locked in cages. That he's quoted saying that. So we are talking about men who literally hate women and feel like we as women don't deserve anything more than being locked in cages, beaten, and raped. So this is a heavy topic, and we could all shy away from talking about these heavy topics. We could all run to the hillside and say, no, it's too heavy. We shouldn't talk about this. We shouldn't do this. But at the end of the day, if we don't, who will?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is a situation that needs a bright light shined on it. We need to call it for what it is.
Yeah.
So,
please excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Excuse my ignorance, but at what time, or when in history did women become a thing, as in a thing to use whenever they feel like it?
It's always been a thing, I think. I think it's just that it was there was a different approach when you look back in the 40s and 50s, where it was the woman stayed at home and just basically pumped out babies all the time, right?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of different cultures and societies over time that have gone back and forth between treating women on equal standing or not giving them equal standing, or only giving them halfway, like, oh yeah, you can kind of participate in some things, but you can't do others. It's kind of been all over the road. Some societies we look back on now and go, wow, that's really, really backwards. But at the time it would just be seen as progressive,
Right.
So
Yes.
it's kind of been all over.
There's a couple of points that I'd like to bring up and show a little intersectionalism with. I've been involved with some fairly radical feminists since the 70s, and this is my first point, never ever heard a woman, even the most radical, toxic feminist I've ever known, proclaim or hope for the abuse and harming of women or of men because of our political and social views on the sexes and what should happen with them and rights and all this kind of stuff. Never ever have I heard that kind of language come out of women. Next point. I think we're all fooling ourselves if we think that this is an incel movement unto itself, that only men have this experience in life of having problems dating, which they claim is their issue, and I will disagree with that in a minute. There's a lot of us women out there who have not had dates in a very long time, and for a lot of reasons, much of what they're talking about being butt ugly. It happens. It's part of life. And I don't hear those women, again, threatening to rape men or shoot them en masse in their lives in violent ways. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing that you're bringing up. The way that you teach men to deal with their emotions is it's pushed towards violence and not towards actually dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so what I think, and this is the conclusion, what we're really talking about is not incel as this cute little definition that they've given themselves to make themselves seem socially acceptable. There are a bunch of toxic masculine individuals who are seriously diseased mentally and need the most forceful means of restraint that we can offer if they continue on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean by as a society, not as individuals taking on these
right.
actions.
I do have a little bit of history from the depths of the internet that kind of will lead into some of this if you guys want to kind of get into the data.
Yeah, and we will start getting into it. Ivy, did that answer your question, or do you want to start going through the PowerPoints and then as we go along, you can ask more questions?
I'll ask more questions as we go.
Okay, cool. Well, Bull, if you want to go ahead and pull up the Incel and Violence PowerPoint, and we will start talking through the stories that I come through for hours. The ladies can tell you right before we started the show, I was really tore up. Like going through this week has really just had such an emotional drain on me. And, but it's important, and I know it's important. So as we get into the collected stories and conversation, I want to make sure that everyone understands in the side chat that there is going to be sensitive things covered. There are quotes in here from them that are very graphic and very sensitive. If you don't feel like it's something you can handle, none of us here on the panel would be upset or offended if you need to step out of the chat. We completely understand.
Yeah.
So with that, Bull, let's go ahead and move forward with Incels and Violence Collected Stories. So the first recorded story I came across was the Montreal Massacre of 1989. That's just one in a long line of mass killings motivated by hatred for women. What would happen from that and how many lives could be saved if we treated them as a pattern of hate crimes? So, like I've said, let's call it for what it is. Violent misogyny is a threat to half of our population. We need to call it for what it is: terrorism.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the Montreal story a little bit. So in Montreal, 1969, a 25-year-old Marc Lepine, armed with a Mini 14 rifle and hunting knife, entered a college classroom at the École Polytechnique, which is a school, and there were 60 or so engineering students, and he killed 6 female students, leaving 3 more injured. He was previously denied admission into this school and later got upset about women who were accepted and working in positions traditionally that were occupied by men. Before he opened fire, he shouted, "You're a bunch of feminists and I hate feminists." One student, Natalie Provost, protested, "I'm not a feminist. I have never fought against men," and he shot her anyway. The gunman then moved into the college corridors, the cafeteria, other classrooms, specifically targeting women to shoot. By the time he turned the gun on himself, 14 women were dead, another 10 were injured, and 4 men were hurt unintentionally in the crossfire. So, let's think about that for a minute. So, this is someone in 1989 who got pissed off because women were getting into jobs and getting into a school that he was denied. And he went in targeting women and killed 14 and left 10 other injured, and then additionally hurt 4 other men in the process. I don't know about any of you on the panel or anyone in the side chat But until I started deep diving this topic and really looking into it, I did not know that. I didn't know this story. And it's a very sad story. Let's be real. So, if we move forward now to the Isla Vista shootings, Elliot Rogers' graphic and elaborate attack plan. So we start out in 1989. We progress forward, 2014. Elliot Rodger, the suspect in a rampage near the University of Santa Barbara, California, Santa Barbara, outlined his intentions in a 137-page document. He literally put together a 137-page document detailing how he wanted retribution. So here are some excerpts from his document, and this is the part where it gets pretty graphic and scary. So, excerpts. Okay. On the day before the day of retribution, I will start the first phase of my vengeance, silently killing as many people as I can around Isla Vista by luring them into my apartment through some form of trickery. The first people I would have killed are my two housemates to secure the entire apartment for myself as my personal torture and killing chamber. After that, I will start luring people into my apartment, knock them out with a hammer, slit their throats. I will torture some of the good-looking people before I kill them, assuming that the good-looking ones have had sex lives. The second phase will represent my war on women. I will punish all the females for the crime of depriving me of sex. They have starved me of sex for my entire youth and gave that pleasure to other men. In doing so, they took many years of my life away. I cannot kill every single woman on earth, but I can deliver a devastating blow that will shake all of them to the core of their wicked hearts. I will attack the very girls who represent everything I hate in the female gender, the hottest sorority of University of California, Santa Barbara. So, let's talk about the fact that before this was written, his deathly rampage had already begun. Before recording himself and putting this, he had already stabbed his two roommates. Afterwards, he drove to the University of Santa Barbara when he attempted to gain entry to a sorority. When he couldn't get in, he shot 3 women outside, killing 2 of them. He then sped through Isla Vista, striking and gunning down pedestrians. So, if we look at the final phase of his, well, maybe we need to take a pause. That was just a lot. So, panel, let's talk about this before we get to the final phase of what his plan was.
The crime of depriving him of sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
The entitlement is off the chart.
Yes.
I can agree
Women
with
are not
this.
these free will beings. They're just NPCs for him to interact with his dick.
That's it.
How dare they?
So as we stated at the beginning, not all incels are terrorists. Not all terrorists are incels. But Elliot Rogers is a self-proclaimed incel by his own writings, who committed terrorist behavior and had a full outline plan to attack and carry out a major attack on people and women.
Yeah.
There's
a really good quote here from a health sociology review where it's talking about these types of mindsets, and it's speaking of providing better mental health care access and counseling for these young men could have a positive impact on negating this trend towards this mass violence. Like, there's not a centralized ideology in the same way some other violent movements have, but they call it something called aggrieved entitlement. And it kind of is explained by saying it's the compensation for humiliation. Humiliation is emasculation. Humiliate someone and you take away his manhood. For many men, humiliation must be avenged or you cease to be a man. Aggrieved entitlement is a gendered emotion and a fusion of the humiliating loss of manhood and the moral obligation and entitlement to get it back.
Right.
So this guy, they feel humiliated, they feel robbed, they feel they have to lash out and, you know, I guess avenge themselves because of it. But it's because they feel entitled to someone else's body, whether or not that person wants it.
Correct. Yep.
Jenni, Ivy, do you have any questions or thoughts or concerns? Or Aimee? I know you've been sitting there, you know, kind of quiet too. I know this is a heavy topic, but I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak or ask questions or have their own thoughts, you know?
Yeah, I'm just, I don't think I really have any questions as of yet. I'm just, all this information is pouring in. So yeah, it's just, but Chemo Maki had a good, wrote down a quote to show you how far back men have felt this way. Regard the society of women as a necessary unpleasantness of social life and avoid it as much as possible. Tolstoy. So it's interesting how many, you know, and that's just a mild one considering what we're seeing here tonight.
Right.
But prevailing thought, culture, and everything like that seems to be at play here.
For sure.
It seems like to me anyway. Of course, I'm only just starting to see this information too, so that's kind of just my thoughts right now.
I was 2 years old when I learned that Tolstoy was a MGTOW.
I was around in 1989 as a fully functioning adult, and
as was I.
I very vaguely remember a shooting up in Canada, and it was notable because that kind of stuff just didn't happen in Canada, especially back then. But I do not remember it ever being mentioned that there was an incel type dude, by whatever name they used then, against women. I don't have any recollection of that, and I can't imagine that it wouldn't if the media hadn't been covering it that way.
Right.
Okay, and now the other thing, this other guy wrote a 137-page manifesto. That's shorter than Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Why? And he's taken more lives than the Unabomber. Why isn't the FBI on these people?
I don't know.
The media should be covering this with every bit of their power. The law enforcement should be going after these people with every bit of their technology. This is not just terrorism anymore. This is a movement that is very easily going to get out of hand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion in the papers and the research that I was reading this week where it discusses the challenge of addressing these violent outbursts because so many people seem convinced and want to convince themselves that it's just random guys. It's just random guys. But they're connected to each other through these message boards, through these forums, through the acts of violence in these manifestos that the guys put out. They're not in a vacuum. They're not existing in isolated pockets. They are congregating in forums and inciting each other with rhetoric, with acts, with postings. It's not just happening in a vacuum.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's get on back to the PowerPoint and let's see what the final phase was for Elliot Rogers' elaborate attack plan. Yes. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just in so much shock. Like I said, this is all new to me, so I'm finding out all of this is going on. I feel extremely sheltered, and I feel very. I don't think I feel bad about it because I mean I can't help for being sheltered because of my life that I have lived. But this is crazy.
Yeah, and it gets crazier.
Goodness.
So going back to the Isla Vista Elliot Rogers story, the final phase of the day of retribution will be the ultimate showdown in the streets of Isla Vista. On the morning before, I will drive down to my father's house and kill my little brother, denying him the chance to grow up and surpass me, along with my stepmother, as she will be in the way. My father will be away on one of his business trips, so thankfully I won't have to deal with him. If he didn't go away on a trip, I might have to postpone the whole plan because of my fear that I might hesitate if I have to kill him. Once I've taken care of my brother and stepmother, I will switch over to the Mercedes SUV, drive back up to Isla Vista. I will use it as one of my killing machines against my enemies. An SUV will cause a lot more damage than my BMW coupe. After I've killed all of the sorority girls at the Alpha Phi house, I will quickly get into the SUV before the police arrive, assuming they would arrive within 3 minutes. I will then make my way to Del Playa, splattering as many of my enemies as I can with the SUV and shooting anyone I don't splatter. I can only imagine how sweet it will be to ram the SUV into all of those groups of the popular young people who I've always been witnessed walking right into the middle of the road as if they are better than everyone else. When they are writhing in pain, their bodies broken and dying, after I splatter them, they will fully realize their crimes. Once I reach Del Playa Street, I will dump the bags of severed heads from my day one plan. I've saved this from the previous victims, proclaiming to everyone how much I've made them all suffer. Once they see all of their friends' heads roll in the streets, everyone will fear me as the powerful god I am. I will then start massacring everyone on Del Playa Street. I will pull up next to the house party and fire bullets at everyone partying on the front yard. I will specifically target the good-looking people and all of the couples. After I've destroyed a house party, I will continue down Del Playa, destroying everything and everyone. When I see the first police car come to their rescue, I will drive away as fast as I can, shooting and ramming anyone in my path until I find a suitable place to finally end my life. Going back to the previous tab, as the story goes, he had already started his plan before he published this by killing his 2 roommates in the apartment already. Then he did go on the spree of killing people in the streets. But after crashing his BMW car, he shot himself in the head. So after he had started his plan, he ended up killing people and then killing himself. All because he was angry because he wasn't getting sex and no one was dating him. Now, keep in mind, that's not technically what it was all about. Let's be real. He had serious mental issues, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But
oh, yeah.
It's not a case of mentally ill people being violent. It's a case of his violence being a result of his untreated issues. So
Correct.
It's not like every mentally ill person or person who struggles with issues is going to be violent. It's that they're not getting treatment and then they're receiving the wrong kind of feedback from their peers.
Yeah. So before we move into the next story, that story in and of itself was a pretty heavy story that I had to read. I read the entire 135-page document, or 37-page document.
Jeez.
No wonder you were a wreck.
I had to. If we're gonna do this topic in this show, we need to do it right.
True.
And so I spent hours reading through the articles and reading specifically this Day of Retribution document, right? It did take a real toll on me. It's been very triggering. Not gonna lie. But yeah, so let's kind of do a roundtable real quick, and then we're gonna get into the next few stories. So, SciStrikeling, do you have any comments or thoughts so far?
Sorry, I was having problems unmuting. I feel like mental health on this one was obviously lacking.
Yes.
The little bit that I did look into was that he was a very troubled young man, even from an early age.
Mhm.
I saw that there was issues since I think the time that he was about 8 or so. And it just seemed like, you can't blame it all on his parents and just say, oh, it's the parents' fault. But I feel like he had issues from that young age that weren't addressed appropriately.
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed.
Agreed. It's just unfortunate that it led him to this ending, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, he lived in a well-off community when he talks about a Mercedes SUV and a BMW,
Mm-hmm.
and his dad traveling on business trips. And let's be real, Isla Vista, Del Playa, those are very wealthy neighborhoods in California. Santa Barbara is not a part of California that isn't wealthy,
Yeah,
So
Del Playa and that whole area is definitely not like South Central. It's
it's not.
affluent in a way that a lot of places down here are not.
So money wasn't the issue. So what is the issue? What does the issue come to?
His sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
But where did he get that sense of entitlement? I think there is something to be said, like mirroring off what SciStrikeling said, that if he was having problems from a young age and he was receiving things from his family and everything, and let's say his family was well off, but they didn't take care of him mentally. Instead, they bought him things to shut him up, or they did this and that. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying if that's the situation, that fosters an environment of entitlement, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean,
It certainly does.
in one of the stories I read, his mother apparently, I'm assuming I don't know the whole story, of course, but I'm assuming by the context of his brother and stepmother that his parents were divorced or
Right.
separated, whatever it may be, but that his mother gave him a BMW to go off to college with to make him feel better.
Yes.
And I think that that sounds like it may have been a theme for his, growing up, and that led to that sense of entitlement kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And having things given to you to make you feel better
Mm-hmm.
fosters that sense of entitlement. That sense of entitlement when you have crushes or people that you desire and they're not reciprocating, that can lead to this type of mentality, which unfortunately is now categorized within the incel I guess umbrella. Does it make him a full incel? I don't know, but it definitely makes him and it definitely gives him this entitlement and superior mentality where he feels he has the rights to these women that he can't get. Therefore, if he can't get them, nobody can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
he
guess
has
that's
traits of an incel. Is that what you're trying to say? The traits of an incel?
Mm-hmm.
I may not actually be one, but just he has those same similar things.
Correct.
I mean, if he's celibate, meaning not having sex, but he's involuntarily celibate, that's an incel.
Yes.
Like that's the literal definition of the term.
But a person really doesn't become the incel until they declare themselves as such, and choose that as a lifestyle and pursuit of information and education.
Yep.
So there's lots of people who are incels, male and female, who aren't incels.
Right.
This is somebody who definitely has a lot of hate and a lot of anger and a lot of entitlement issues.
Resentment.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, resentment's a good word. Resentment is a very good word.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Are there?
And we.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, go ahead.
Is there? I'm sure I'm so shocked. I'm sorry. I've definitely heard of people that battle to get a date or someone to love or someone that loves them, but don't turn out this way? Is it just the self-entitlement that changes everything?
I think it's mental illness and self-entitlement. There's a lot, I think, that leads to this outcome, right? It's not one particular thing.
It's definitely has perfect storm elements to it. That there's a lot of people who have faced every one of these difficulties in life. It seems to be the special combination of with the particular person that causes a situation, which is true in any mental health crisis.
Right.
There's lots of people who are depressed that don't kill themselves, and that we all know.
Right.
But I think the one thing that is central to all of this is the masculine toxicity, the inability of the classically defined masculine personality to not deal with feelings, to the deficit in personality that a person like this has, according to their own perception of it, that if you have feelings, you're something subhuman or submale. I think that is probably the nexus where all these elements come together and then blossom or explode, I think is a better word, from. But that's, of course, just my opinion.
That it's a feeling of powerlessness, and their reaction to that feeling of powerlessness is I must exert power, and their method of exerting power is to cause violence.
Yes.
And that is not, obviously that's not the healthy way to deal with that. But when you're in a situation where you feel powerless, the people you seek out in order to help you cope with that feeling is just as important as you having the feeling itself. If you are in a situation where you feel powerless and you get up with a group of people who are telling you, hell yeah, brother, you just need to go dominate the space around you and take control and get revenge, that's going to have a completely different outcome than a group of people who say, oh my God, man, I'm sorry you're struggling. Let's talk about this. Let's brainstorm and figure out, what's going on here. And they actively work to problem solve and support you rather than causing you to act out.
Well, let's get these super chats caught up, Aimee, and then let's get back to the PowerPoint, because we still have a whole other PowerPoint to cover too.
Okay, that's good.
GPS for $3 said, thank you all for doing this.
Thank you.
Cross Puncher for Canadian $2 said, love all of you on the panel, heart emoji.
That's right.
And Crafty Keela for £5 said, when a story is hard to cover, it takes very strong people to have the courage to speak about it. Thank you, heart emoji.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. So let's get back to the PowerPoint.
Before we go, Chemo Mac makes a question, came in late and asks, are femcells as angry as incel males? I dropped in late. I want that one.
Okay.
Yes, except within the typical way that women are raised in our society, they don't turn that anger to the outside. They internalize it. They become depressed. And they cause ice cream stocks to rise in price.
Especially chocolate ones.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite.
High in magnesium.
So depression, I think, is a big feature of how women deal with that experience.
That too, you are absolutely right about the way women are taught to kind of internalize their emotions, because anytime a woman has an emotional outburst, unlike a man, she's criticized for being a harpy or being whiny or being bitchy. And so you kind of over time go, well, if I speak out on this, people are going to say that I'm bitchy or that I'm being a harpy. So you kind of just you take it all in.
Yep.
And just so everybody is aware, we understand that there is a radicalized femcel movement as well, and that is going to be a topic that's covered in the near future. I've already started doing some research on that. So even though we are a panel of 7 women and a bull, we don't want to just cover the things that men are doing that are harmful. We have covered Girl Defined. We have covered the transformed wife. We have covered women who are causing harm as well, and we will continue to do that. So, don't look at what we're presenting tonight as this is all that we are about. We are about equality, respect, and honor across the board, and that includes calling out women as well.
Yeah. And not just equality, equity, and parity as well.
Yes. Yeah.
In equality, we don't want people to be mistreated equally. We want people to have parity so that we're all at the same standing with each other. So,
and I just wanted to make one point before we move away from this particular incident. Again, just looking into this gentleman a little bit more, Elliot Rogers, or not gentleman, obviously, but this young man. It seems that not only was there a sense of entitlement, which obviously there was, but it seems more like it started out as him actually being bullied for a lot of his early years. And I don't know, I don't know, again, too many of the details, but just from what I've read was, he was in and out of multiple schools as a kid. He had a lot of issues where he wound up in a school with only about 100 kids because his anxiety and fear from being bullied was so high. So again, I think it comes down to a lot of the help he didn't get from his family at the time.
For sure.
And how important that is at such a young age.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And one thing I can chime in on is when my kids were in school, my son's 26 and my daughter's going to be 21. When they were in school, they had a principal that instilled this, everything had to be positive. There was no negativity in the schools anymore. If you were being bullied, they had like this agenda you wrote down on a piece of paper what your problem was. And they were supposed to have meetings every so often and discuss the agenda. From what I heard from my children and others, it never happened. They never discussed anything.
Sounds right.
And one of our little neighbor kids, he's a year older than my former neighbor, year older than my daughter. He could be a bully. He had a mouth on him, but he was also bullied at the same time. But the school put it all onto him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, he turned out okay. I haven't heard anything bad about him, thankfully. But it could have gone in a bad way, and it didn't for him.
Right. Oh, for sure.
But bullying is an awful thing. I've been through it. It's awful. It's not it sticks with in your head. And I'm 54, and it sticks to me still.
Oh, for sure.
So it's never going to go away. But it's all in how you handle it, I think. And sometimes we're not giving the kids the keys to handle it correctly these days.
For sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Aimee, we got some more super chats.
Steve McRae for $5 said, "This is one of the most completely underrated channels on YouTube."
That's right.
Hey guys, could you stop sending us super chats,
No.
I mean, Kiwi's at 4,000 Korean won. So it was a hippo.
Yeah, surprise hippo, huh? It's cute.
Thank you guys so much. Okay,
Yeah.
let's get back to the PowerPoint because we're going to be touching now on someone who was mentioned as well in the initial video, Alec Minassian. So there is a 4-hour long interview that you can actually go and watch. I watched the 4-hour long interview. Do not ask me how I sat through it. But what I can tell you is that in his interview, he did admit that he was radicalized online by incels.
Yeah.
So I think this is one that we can actually say is probably for sure an incel. But Alec Minassian is accused of driving a rental van into a crowd of one of Toronto's busiest streets, killing 10 pedestrians and injuring 16 in the deadliest act of mass murder in the city's history. The attack traumatized Canada's largest city and casts a spotlight on the so-called incel online subculture of men united by sexual frustration and a hatred of women. In merely a 4-hour interview after his arrest, Minassian told the police officers he was a virgin who never had a girlfriend, and admitting using the van as a weapon so he could inspire more attacks. Minassian claimed to have been in contact with Elliot Rogers, from the previous story, who killed 6 people and himself in 2014 on the campus of the University of California, Santa Barbara. Roger is a self-described incel who posted deep misogynistic videos and sprawling online manifesto calling for an overthrow of what he said was feminist domination. So, Alec Minassian, you can go watch the 4-hour-long video. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to cause issues for you. It is very triggering. He has no remorse for what he did at all. He felt he was entitled to do what he did. He says he was radicalized by the incel online subculture because he was a virgin and had never dated a woman, and that he literally put Elliot Rodger on a pedestal and worshipped him for what he had done, praised him for what he had done, praised him for his 137-page manifesto with what he wanted to do. And Minassian's entire goal was to inspire more attacks. And those were his words in the 4-hour interview. So, this is a situation that is very concerning. When you have someone who has the sole purpose to inspire more attacks after literally worshiping someone else who had a 137-page manifesto on wanting to kill women, kill family, kill roommates, kill the good-looking people. Toxicity.
What else can you call that but terrorism?
Yes. Toxicity breeds toxicity. And when you find a group that is radicalized and extreme, you're going to find extreme behavior within it. And you're going to find people like Minassian who is going to look up to people like Elliot Rodger and think that is the goal.
A lot of them do.
And then they take it upon themselves to act out in some of the most heinous, violent acts. And their goal is to inspire more or, to hurt more. And it's just one of those situations to where, let's call a spade a spade. He actually does identify as an incel. And he committed violent acts with no remorse.
Yeah.
This is the scary side of radicalism. This is the scary side of it.
Yeah. And there's something that I've been thinking pretty much all week since we picked the topic. And there was a question in the chat earlier about what event precipitated this topic. And it was this story about Alec Minassian. The authorities in that city finally admitted this is an act of domestic terrorism, and they called it that. And that's what kind of precipitated this whole thing, is them finally releasing a statement calling it what it is. Yes. And we were like, hey, we need to address this. We need to talk about the fact that these ideas are not harmless. There's a difference between talking about your emotions and turning it into radicalized violence.
Yes. Okay. So moving forward, unless anyone else wants to chime in on that, we have one more story, and then we have some actual screenshots, and then a couple of quotes from Incel online forums that I went in and pulled. Don't ask me why I went to the Incel online forums, but I felt like if I wanted to talk about it, I needed to look, right? So,
yeah.
Right.
I get it.
Chat, yes.
Yeah, and before we do, I just want to get, we got some super chats here.
Yes. Crafty Keela for €2 said, just for Matthew Hart. Christ Puncher for Canadian. I said, I'll never send a super chat again. Sad face emoji?
Bad because you
Come on.
Yeah, we'll get him.
Godless Scummer for £2 said, sorry, Matt, did you say so? And more super chats? Happy face. And next, Crafty Kilo for €2 said, super chat train, choo choo, sleep emoji.
Thank you guys so much for the support.
Jenny Morgan for $1.99 said, I'm so glad I'm not a male. Oh, so glad.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. All right. So this next story, I want to show the progression too. Not only am I trying to go kind of like in a chronological order with some of the stories I've read, but I also want to show the progression of how young we're starting to see this develop. So in this next story, Canada police say a machete killing was an incel terror attack. So this is the Canadian police calling it incel terroristic or terror attack. And I also want to point out that since 2015, hate crimes towards women under the cover of MGTOW or being an incel has increased by 17%. So in the last 5 years, it has increased by 17%. That is internationally. So, I know that seems like that is a large number, let's be real, but when you're talking about billions and billions of people, 17%, is a fraction, but still, that's a big jump in the past 5 years. So, the suspect, who cannot be named, they are a minor, is alleged to have entered a massage parlor in northern Toronto in February, brandishing a machete. Police in Canada are treating the machete attack, in which a woman was murdered and 2 others were injured, as an act of terrorism after discovering evidence suggesting that he was motivated by violent misogyny. Terrorism comes in many forms, and it's important to note that it's not restricted to any particular group, religion, or ideology. The RCMP said in a statement announcing the update on charges on Tuesday. He is alleged to have killed Ashley Noel Arzaga, a 24-year-old mother, and injuring the owner as she tried to subdue him. So, again, we're getting younger. We've seen Minassian, who is a little older. We've seen Elliot Rogers, who was, late teens, I think he was actually early 20s. And then now we're getting to a minor. And moving forward to the next slide, this is a slide of a documented conversation that happened between a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old. So in this conversation that was uploaded and shown in an incel forum, which the name is not listed on here because it is a minor, so there is no name listed on this conversation. But the conversation reads as follows. This is the 16-year-old male talking to the female. Women bleed on the birthing bed while men bleed on the battlefield. That is the nature of the species man. Feminists have never and will never accomplish anything of worth because they reject the masculine principle. The women of the highest accomplishment are those who submitted. It is women who struggle keeping themselves fully clothed, yet we're told men are at fault. Enjoy being sexually worthless mess who played a mystery meat Monday with all the degenerate criminal bikers. The woman responds, what is this a response to? The 16-year-old boy says, your subhuman self who celebrates cuckoldry and decadence. She replies, my subhuman self, you think I'm less than human? And he says, nothing but a cum dumpster to be used by the criminal bikers. How old are you? How old are you? She said, I'm 21 and you're 16. He says, when you turn 25, you'll notice that your eggs start declining. How does that make you feel? She says, why do I care about my eggs? He said, I don't, but you should care about them. Once you turn 27 plus, the alpha bad boys will pay less attention, and soon no biker criminal will want to participate in the transaction of power. You'll be 35 and childless. childless. She says, why do you keep talking about biker criminals and alpha bad boys? He said, high-value men like me will be going after the 18 to 23-year-olds. Meanwhile, you're desperate.
High-value men?
Yes, you're desperate to settle with a beta cuck who watches you fuck other men. She says, my boyfriend and I are monogamous, but I appreciate the concern. She said, your boyfriend knows you fucked over 10 guys. A woman retains the DNA of every man who came inside her body. He relished in the thought of licking up the cream pie given to you by a random degenerate. Your boyfriend is physically weak. I could fuck you in front of him and he would be too weak to stop. He says, you're a minor and I'm comfortable with what you're talking about and fucking me even hypothetically. He said, don't worry, I wouldn't even rape you. You would.
Wow.
You want open borders so you can control more ethnic minorities, only willing to give you a chance when they get the white feminist pussy in their nose. You relish the thought of being their white feminist overlords breeding. Years ago, you give birth to many bastards. You want the atrophy of Western masculinity. 16 years old, y'all.
He hasn't even lived life yet.
No, and he sounds like he's just parroting some of these other incels.
That's exactly what he's doing.
16.
That almost
His brain's
sounds
not
like
fully
a
developed
copy
at
and
16.
paste. That sounds like a copy
Yeah,
and paste.
it does, doesn't it?
It probably is. But the point is that there are minors
Yes.
that are being talked to, reached out to, and in a way kind of groomed to be the next generation of MGTOW, incels, whatever you want to call it. And these two stories, the 16-year-old and the other minor who actually killed somebody, think about how young this is getting.
What makes it? What at 16 years old? Sorry, at 16 years old, and you're thinking like this already.
Yes.
What?
It's very sad.
What has happened to the youth that they are thinking like this? I mean, at that age, I was, oh my goodness. Boys were a thing, but I mean, it wasn't like we had to have sex with them. You know, it was. I mean, I was even too shy to kiss a guy. Never mind thinking about having sex with them, and now they're wanting to kill women because women are not having sex with them. I don't understand what is happening to our youth.
I think what it is they're getting on some of these forums or somewhere, and to me, almost seems like they're almost being preyed upon.
Mm-hmm. I think,
and I mean, at 16, that boy's brain is not fully developed at all.
Right.
So he's easily led into thinking things he shouldn't be thinking.
Yes.
That's what's scary.
Well, let's
this conversation floated around the transgender community on Twitter a time back. Before I suspect before you got a hold of it, and it was presented in a discussion that an activist trans woman was having with a member of the LGBT community in UK, which is really not an LGBT group, but a conglomeration of haters that hate transgender people and hate women. They just use the title and framework of LGBT to get into areas and have people listen to them that normally would spit them out instantly. Mm-hmm. And they're unfortunately being quite successful with it. But nonetheless, the fact that this conversation exists and is being used by the hater community is what's really disturbing to me.
Yes.
That this is being held up with respect and glory with this kid's talk.
Yes.
I'm not necessarily convinced that it's an actual conversation, by the way.
No, me either.
But nonetheless, the words are there.
There was a lot of mature euphemisms and MGTOW and incel verbiage that I think he would have had to have received from another source, whether it be online forums or whatever the case may be. So,
yeah.
And do we know it was an actual 16-year-old either? Could have said they're being 16 years old.
Exactly.
You don't know.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The story is that they are 16. However, you know, it could be that they were lying in the chat, in the conversation too. So that's something, you know, of course, them being 16 is alleged, other than the fact that in the conversation she says, I'm 21 and you're 16. This is uncomfortable. And he doesn't deny it, right? So, but let's get these super chats and move along, because we're 2 pages away from being done with my PowerPoint, and then we've got the data PowerPoint to run through.
Okay, sounds good. Here we go, honey.
Got the scummer for $5, for £5, said, saddens me to see a 16-year-old boy exposed to this vile ideology to this degree.
It's sad, isn't it? Sad. Thank you very much.
So on to the next page. This is where I went into some blog sites to look up quotes from, you know, the various message boards or different places where incels and MGTOWs meet. So I'm just going to read these quotes to you. So one quote is, all women are sluts. An incel posted in one of their message boards. It is in their very nature. The next quote is a little bit more triggering. It says, I was pondering what it would be like to have a Jewish rape slave.
Oh my God.
Nazis have had a really good time with them. The man went on to detail how great it must be to have been a member of the Gestapo in the concentration camp, wistfully imagining telling one of his victims, you're not getting food until you put out.
Wow.
I feel like I'm going to throw up.
Yeah. Another one, I'm not giving up. Another incel posted talking about his plan to find a passed out female at a party and sexually assault her while she's unconscious. She won't know, and she won't lose anything since she's not a virgin. The next quote, we need a constitutional amendment forcing attractive virgin females to have sex with incels. As far as he's concerned, that is the only way to stop mass shootings.
Oh, God, no way.
The violence is to force it. The problem, he argued, wasn't gun or mental health. It was that women wouldn't let men have sex with them. Time and again, he ranted mass shooters suffer from this problem. And then the last quote that I felt was important to put in here was, you need to view rape from a rapist perspective. One incel told a woman after she shared her experience of being sexually assaulted, if anything, he felt she should be flattered. It requires a lot of passion of a man to risk himself just for the act of sex with a female.
Oh, God.
Fucking cannot. I cannot.
So, as you can tell, I did a lot of deep diving this week, and it has taken quite a toll on me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to leave the last slide with something. It's a very powerful statement that I came across that really resonated with me. And it says, when women are killed because they are women, we have to acknowledge that and not retreat in silence. Silence doesn't honor the dead, and it doesn't protect the living.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is my
power. A lot of these comments in the chat where the guys are saying, I had no idea it was this bad. I didn't realize that people were saying these things. You know what, man? If you see or hear any of your peers saying these things, speak up. Say something.
Please.
Tell them this is not okay. Don't chuckle and laugh it off. Don't treat it as harmless. It's not a joke.
Oh. And again,
reach out.
these stories that I've gone through tonight, the conversations, the quotes, are very powerful in and of themselves and extremely disheartening. And it weighs a lot. It's weighed a lot on me this week. I'm not going to lie. But I did it because it was important.
Mhm.
I did this so you, the audience, and my other panel members didn't have to. I don't think that every incel is a terrorist. But I read these stories and read these quotes, and I read it all, and I watched that 4-hour interview, and it is extremely heartbreaking. There have been too many lives lost because people don't speak up, and people don't do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, please, if you see a woman or a man being mistreated in this fashion or talked down to, do something.
Yeah.
Do something, please.
I have to take exception to one point you've made a couple times, and I understand where that point comes from, and I don't begrudge it, but I want to say why I disagree.
Okay.
If I stand up and represent myself and my political beliefs and stand behind the party platform of one party or the other, all of the world sees me as a member, as one of them. You are a Republican, you are a Democrat, you are a socialist.
Right.
If these people are standing up in these forums and things and listening to, partaking in the Incel platform, the MGTOW platform, and are not standing up there to say, stop this, then they're part of it. And if this corrupts itself into a form of terrorism, well then, God damn it, they're terrorists too, because they're allowing it to happen in their space. And I do not forgive them, and I will not allow them the space to say, oh, I didn't really mean it. It was a joke. I was just
I'm with
listening.
you on that one.
Right.
Sorry, if you hang out with them, you are them. Fuck you, dude.
Sorry, I did not mean to get emotional. It's just, it's
okay. It's okay.
And I mean, really deep diving at this week brought out a lot. It is very triggering, especially to someone like me who is a sexual assault victim and having to really dive deep into it. It's taken a bit of a toll. So, but Jenni, I absolutely appreciate and respect what you just said. So, before we get into the next bit, let's do a quick roundtable. SciStrikeling, do you have any thoughts?
Not anything particularly new to add. Just the amount of mental health issues here.
Yeah. It's pretty devastating. Aimee, I know we have some super chats, but please add any thoughts that you have as well.
Yes, I'll do the thoughts too. I was just going to say that this is why mental health is so important in this country, anywhere actually. We need to, one, end the stigma. Two, we need to get better access to it. We need to make sure that, these people can get the help that they need and have it readily available and accessible. Obviously, I'm seeing just issues everywhere. So, yeah, it's something that desperately is needed. We can see it here in all of these things that were posted. And we've got some super chats too, so I'll let him read.
Cross punching for Canadian Dawson. We all love and appreciate our Ilya Moon. Heart emoji, hug emoji.
Oh, that's nice.
Aww.
Uh-huh.
Here, that's them.
Steve McRae for $2. Speak up against injustice and trolls. Heart emoji, you moon.
I love you, Moon.
Love you, Moon.
And we got this one.
Cheese Mido for $30, and thank you for talking about this. It must have taken a lot to read through all the stories and watch the interviews.
Exactly, huh?
Yeah.
Got the scummer for £2, and thanks for doing this show, guys.
What's that thing at the end?
Heart emoji.
Yes. Thank you all so very much for all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do this show for you guys. We want to bring you funny, but we also want to bring you real topics, things that are really affecting all of us at the end of the day, because not all of these stories just had women killed. Men were killed too. The incel movement, MGTOW movement might be a war against women, but at the end of the day, they hate certain sects of men just as much. And so, you know, this is it's a lot to take in, especially for someone like Ivy who maybe hasn't heard all of the stories or seen it all. And I know, like, for SciStrikeling and Aimee, a lot of the information that we're reviewing tonight is very new to them too. So it's a lot of just absorption. I've been in the weeds of it for a week now, and there are so many still untold stories left on the table because I just couldn't fit it all in. So, but with that said, does anyone else have anything to say before I turn it over to Vishanti for her to run this next section of the show?
I read somewhere that they call women and certain men Chads and Stacys.
Yes.
Is there a reason why they've picked those names, or is it just because names?
They wanted to differentiate themselves from the supposed, like, perfectly attractive, successive guy and the women who they think are only attracted to those guys. So the guys that they think, oh, well, they're perfect and handsome and so forth, they get to be a Chad, and all the women who are attracted only to Chads are Stacys. So it's just their way of, you know, subjugating and dehumanizing people by
it's their terminology. And if you want to learn more, Avi, about terminology, Cheshire Vic put out a wonderful video. She did a live stream going through specifically incel, MGTOW terminology. I know Mr. Sirius was there that day. Maybe Mr. Sirius can dig up the link and put it in the side chat. But if you want to learn more about the verbiage and the terminology used, her video is absolutely wonderful to get that education and learn.
I'll definitely go look for it. They're basically doing an us versus them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what they call good looking is quite subjective.
Yes.
I mean, each person, I mean, you know, everyone has a different cup of tea, and to lump as, I mean, just according to one of the videos I've seen, you know, blonde woman, to lump all blonde women into one box is just pretty unfair.
Yeah.
And not all of us are like that. Not all of us are these Stacys that they call, you know. Not all of us will go for the successful, attractive men. You know, some of us find the attractiveness in what other people would see as ugly men. So it's pretty subjective, pretty horrific that they would all women go for
Roboting.
very successful men only, which is not the case. Am I okay?
You were roboting there for just a second, but you're okay now.
Oh dear. My internet was buffering. I just think it's pretty horrific that just because of a few things that have gone wrong, someone can just snap like this. I guess it's not just it's not just a way of being brought up, but it's influence you to think like this, to make you a way to go forward to solve your problems, as if this could solve problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bull, let's go ahead and get Vashanti's PowerPoint pulled up, and Vashanti can go through her portion of what she dived into. Because, like I said, we kind of divided and conquered because there was a lot to come through.
Yeah, there's a lot of material. Mine is considerably shorter, so it's going to go a little bit faster. Ilya handled a lot of the individual news stories and a lot of the different incidents, and this is going to be a little bit broader, and it's going to connect it to these other sections of men on the internet that have kind of arisen over the years. So, all right, let's hit up the next slide. This is pretty straightforward. This is basically just the current incel mindset. It feeds off of misogyny, which is the hatred of women, racism, and entitlement, which we've talked quite a bit about. Next. Okay, so the two papers that I read this week, one of them is from Studies in Conflict and Terrorism. This was written by Hoffman, Ware, and Shapiro. And the other paper that I read, which is a lot shorter and it's easier to share if you have people who kind of want an introduction to this, it's from the Anti-Defamation League. So if you want to look up these resources, I've got links for you. They're here. If you want this paper, hit me up. I don't necessarily want to take money from these researchers, but if you're having, a hard time, hit me up and I'll totally get it to you. So that's where the most information came from, is these two websites and papers. Okay, so what we're seeing in the modern incel movement are a couple of common themes. Biological determinism, one's place in the world based on how you look, blaming women, and dominating or subjugating your environment and the people around you. These are commonly spread around, and it's just like, you're not going to find a group of MGTOWs or incels that don't share almost all of these traits. Okay, next. Okay, so the incel version of determinism is quite a bit different than like the actual scientific definitions of determinism, which is probably a shock to no one. They think women are inherently shallow, that women owe men their bodies, they owe men sex, that the physical traits of somebody limits their dating pool or expands it. So if you're, quote, handsome, you get the ladies. If you're, quote, ugly, you don't get the ladies. So that's going to impact, how much sex you're having. So because of these traits, they think that women are excluding them and denying them what they consider their right to sex. And I put Mr. Robot up there from Futurama because he is Captain Obvious when it comes to diagnosing people. So that's kind of in there as a little joke. Okay, so misogyny. It's not a huge leap from a woman's quest for equal rights threatens my stature as a man to minorities and women's quest for equal rights threaten my stature as a white man. There is a huge overlap between men who are getting involved in the modern incel movement and people who are white supremacists and people who are MGTOWs and people who are pickup artists. It's not a complete circle, but there is a large overlap because so many of these ideas that they believe about themselves and women, meaning like, oh, well, I'm actually superior, I'm not disadvantaged, and women are awful. A lot of these carry over between the groups. And as I was reading these papers, I kind of had this thought, like, if women are inherently shallow, why are they being blamed for, quote, whatever their nature is? And these men feel like, well, they're the only one that are allowed to choose. Women are just these automatons who are expected to be available, all the time, regardless of what they want. So free will is definitely not their friend because women can choose not to interact with them and that makes them angry. So not really a surprise there. Incel propaganda, it directly overlaps with racism because of that feeling of superiority and entitlement and, you know, oh, well, my genetics versus their genetics. Okay, this is one of the stories that Ilya didn't touch on directly. Scott Bierley, I really hope I'm butchering that. He showed a pattern early on in his life that went unchecked. And he is the person who shot up a yoga studio in Florida. He's not just looked up to by a lot of the modern incels, he's called Saint Yoga Cell by a lot of them. They consider him a hero for what he did, and people that aren't incels that knew him in real life called him Nazi Scott. So he started out in high school. He wrote revenge fantasies about girls in the school that wouldn't date him. He was really angry with them, so he wrote a lot of, not like fan fiction, but he wrote stories about getting revenge on them through violent means. He had so many instances of groping and like inappropriate touching towards female students that he taught and was around. I couldn't list them all. It was just, there were so many. He felt entitled to their bodies in a way that wasn't just sex. He felt, I can walk up to these women and grab their butt. You know, he would be teaching at various learning institutions. He would make inappropriate comments to female students. He was fired numerous times. He actually went into the army for a brief time. He was brought up on charges for having inappropriate contact with female soldiers and yet somehow made it out with an honorable discharge. So there was not a lot of escalation there. People also, if you look up this guy, and you're going to find about his shitty music career. His songs, there are way too many, but the people that helped him produce this will tell you that they're crap. They just musically aren't very good, but the lyrical content involved violence, like cannibalism, kidnapping and torture, shootings, and so forth. That was a huge aspect of his music. He was just venting all of these feelings. And people, again, didn't take him very seriously, so they're, oh, he's just making songs, at least he's not out doing it, you know. Well, here's another one. He made a pilgrimage, quote unquote, to the sorority house where Ted Bundy murdered women in Florida. Again, on its own, that's just weird. Combined with this behavior, you're starting to see a pattern emerge. Ted Bundy was a man who notoriously hated women. He hated women who wouldn't date him. His whole MO was torturing and belittling and degrading women even after they were dead. So it's not really a surprise that he would look up to Bundy. Scott was actually banned from the Florida State campus for, once again, groping women. He was fired for viewing porn at work. He tried to do a stand-up career, but he lost bookings because he kept telling so many anti-Semitic jokes that people were like, yo, this isn't funny. So that made him mad. More groping, more firing. It's just repeated patterns of behavior. He couldn't keep his teaching jobs because he couldn't keep his hands to himself. He started to withdraw. Obviously, since he can't hold down a job, he's struggling financially. So that's really starting to build up the tinder. And then he gets on the internet. He starts searching for yoga studios. He settled on one that apparently just got his interest more than the others, and he ended up walking into this hot yoga studio in Tallahassee and killing people, wounding them, men and women. And before he was apprehended, he committed suicide. So what you're seeing, like, you look back on this and go, wow, this guy's messed up. But it's all these different incidents over his life that people didn't take seriously to the point that they were like intervening in his life. He kept getting for teaching where their background checks didn't pick up on these incidents of groping. It's not being recorded in a way that follows him throughout his career. He continues to make efforts to express his views, and when people say, hey, that's not okay, he just moves on to the next behavior until he finds something that he kind of can get away with. You know what I'm saying? And incels, again, the modern incel boards look up to this guy as an example and I guess a saint. That's what you're facing. You're not looking at these guys in isolation. You're taking them, you're publicizing their acts, you're accessing their works and their ideas and their rhetoric, and it's radicalizing other men who say, oh yeah, look what he did. He's so great. I want to be like that.
Yeah.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
For sure.
You guys have any comments so far on that?
Yeah.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Fashanti, for taking those 2 studies and looking into them and definitely, you know, talking about it.
Yeah, and there's really only one more slide that's really relevant because you had mentioned some of these gentlemen earlier in the Think Progress clip. These quotes, again, this is one of the hardest things that I've had to read because I knew in sort of a non-tangible way that this level of hate was out there, but until you read it, you just don't understand how awful it really, really is. The papers go into a lot of the overlap between white supremacy and the incel mindset. And I found a couple quotes that kind of gave an example of that. Roger Devlin is, I guess, a self-styled academic. He writes a lot about white supremacy. And speaking about women, he says, quote, your freedom has brought white people in our land nothing but hardship. Instead of going for a breadwinner and breeding 6 warriors while being a happy housefrau. White supremacist. Common themes of women just being baby makers, you should stay at home, you shouldn't have free will, etc. Andrew England, who you also had in that clip, he's the guy who founded the Daily Stormer. That is one of the largest neo-Nazi and white supremacist outlets on the entire website, on the entire internet. He says, the fact is, when you give women rights, they destroy absolutely everything around them, no matter what other variable is involved. Even if you become the ultimate alpha male, some stupid bitch will still ruin your life. And you already had that clip in there about what he thinks about women. He admits that he hates them. So the Elliot Rodger also wrote about this. There's another, he shares this mindset about women. Elliot Rodger says, I concluded that women are flawed. There's something mentally wrong with the way their brains are wired, as if they haven't evolved from animal-like thinking. They're incapable of reason or thinking rationally. They're like animals, completely controlled by their primal depraved emotions and impulses. That is why they are attracted to barbaric wild beasts like men. They are beasts themselves. Beasts should not be able to have any rights in a civilized society. If their wickedness is not contained, the whole of humanity will be held back from advancement to a more civilized state. Women should not have the right to choose who to mate with. That choice should be made for them by civilized men of intelligence.
Oh my God.
Yes. That is a direct quote from his manifest.
Oh my God.
And I didn't put a lot of examples in here specifically of anti-Semitism just because it became overwhelming to me emotionally being Jewish. I had to draw the line at some point for my own sanity, but that exact label and that exact mindset of this group of people are like animals, they're like beasts, they should not have choices, they should not be allowed to do things, that is part and parcel of that supremacist movement. And there's a huge overlap between these incels, and it's not a surprise that they end up becoming violent. Those ideas incite them to express themselves with violence. They're not harmless ideals. They're not just jokes. Shit posting is not just shit posting when it leads to stuff like this. Speak up and say something, guys. If your friends think these things, please intervene to the best of your ability and sanity, obviously. These guys need help. They need help.
Could I say something? If we go back to the Byerly rap sheet, which is probably the best way to term it, I had no idea that this person had that kind of history. It makes me really ask, at what point do we pull the trigger on these guys? And as a society, we have got to find some way to take these people off of the streets and to change this thinking, to correct this behavior before it leads to the deaths of other people, before it leads to the death of a spouse. We hear about these mass shootings. How many of these incels have gone out and to a bar or something, that picked up some woman and then beat the fuck out of her because of his attitude that she won't have sex with him? And it doesn't get reported. It doesn't make the news.
Yeah.
How do we structure this? How do we pull the trigger and get these guys the fuck off the street?
I have my own idea about that, but I try to be broad in saying that it's like what Aimee was saying earlier, take away the stigma of asking for help, for getting assistance, for finding a healthy way to speak to somebody about what you feel. You feel lonely. That's natural. You want companionship. That's human behavior. But we have to take away that stigma of going, hey, friend/therapist/counselor, I feel lonely. I feel isolated. I want connection and I'm not getting it and I'm angry. Take away that stigma.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I read something that, kind of refers back to, my earlier statement and stuff about the other guy being bullied. And there was an interview with a couple of people who were from an incel community. And the one person on it had said that he was about roughly 20 years old. He described a childhood that destroyed his confidence with women. He said, I was bullied heavily, which led me to develop severe anxiety and self-hatred. Because of my anxiety, I lack confidence, something women pick up on, and that labels me as a loser. Most of the incels I know are around 16 to 30 years old. They have either been bullied, have autism, or just conventionally unattractive faces. And I just feel like that seems to be a general theme among most of the people that are labeling themselves as incels. And I feel like that's something that from a young age, mental health needs to be addressed. If there's any of these thoughts, parents and loved ones and friends should not, just turn a blind eye or, try to ignore it or anything like that. These people need help as soon as these kind of behaviors are, are identified.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
And it was like we were talking about Alec Minassian and some of the other self-identified violent incels. They routinely tell each other to go ER when they're talking about expressing their rage in violent ways because they look up to people like Elliot Rodger and they say, oh, I'm going to go ER. That's their code for saying I'm going to behave like he did. That's a regular thing that you'll see on those forums.
Wow.
And which one was Elliot Rodger in?
The University of California, Santa Barbara.
Oh,
the one
okay.
The
The
137.
137-page dude. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that we have tried to do this topic in a sensitive and compassionate way with as much honesty and integrity as we could. I think all of us here on the panel may have small differences in views when it comes to nuances or semantics, but I think at the end of the day, we are all still a panel strong with beliefs that a hate crime is a hate crime, regardless of if it's towards women, towards people of a different color, religious, sex, whatever the case may be. And I think the one thing we all can agree on is this is a topic that needed to have a light shined on it. It's a topic that not many people are aware of. There are stories that no one knew about. And I think it's important that since our channel is so aimed for the empowerment of women's voices, that we gave a voice to the victims that no longer have a voice. And I want to do a quick roundtable, but I really urge everybody in the side chat to please stay once we close out. Bull has put together a beautiful closeout video of all the victims. And I really think that it's important that we look at that and we remember what this is all about. So let's do a roundtable. Let's talk about our thoughts. Let's talk about our feelings. And then, chat, we're going to leave you with what this is about. We're going to leave you with the pictures and the images of all the lives that have been lost. So let's start with our guest, Ivy. I know this is probably shaking you to the core. But what are your thoughts? What are your feelings?
Honestly, there's just so much information that I've now had to take in. That's why I've been so quiet, and I do apologize that I haven't had much to say.
It's okay.
I did try and read up before coming on, but I think there's just too much to go through. I didn't realize there was so much. I should have started this a couple days ago. But it might have scared me from actually coming on in the first place if I did go and look up too much. And I'm glad I didn't. And I'm glad you guys have taught me something that I didn't know, but that was really this bad. Like I say, I've only heard of Incel from the first time you had your show with V-Boy. And I don't know what to say. I honestly don't know what to say.
Oh.
That these people have so much going through their mind that they think that they have to lash out like this because of something they're not getting. And because they think they're better than women or other men, and I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all right.
And to the victims, my fiance was telling me about the story about the one guy that couldn't get into the sorority, and he killed 3 girls walking back to the sorority. He told me about the one father was saying that yes, his daughter was just a guardian angel to save the 60 girls that were in that sorority. He lost a daughter, but she saved 60 other women. And to think that could be any of our daughters, sisters, cousins, it's crazy. It's crazy. Incel is not a thing here. We are a third world country. We have other problems we are dealing with besides COVID. And I'm sorry, I'm going too long, but this is just too much.
Okay.
Thank you guys for allowing me on here to teach me something new.
This is a very heavy topic, and if you're not moved emotionally hearing these stories and knowing the loss, it's been a difficult week diving into all of this and hearing the interview was very difficult. But we will stand together and we will stand strong. And Ivy, I think everyone on this panel, we're all here for you. And if you need someone to talk to help wrap your head around things, I think any one of us here would be happy to spend some time with you and talking through things.
Thank you. I just want to say something. I know not all men are like this, and I'll never ever generalize a man for what other men do.
Yeah.
These men need help. They really need help. I know some really good men in my life, from uncles to friends to my father. And I'm talking about my real father, not Dutch heretic.
Yeah, I know.
It's
we know.
People. I'm sorry. Okay, I can't say anymore. Thanks, but thank you so much for letting me on here.
We love you and we appreciate
It's been a journey.
We love you, sweetie.
Yeah,
Love you,
and
Ivy.
Thank you. Yes, we do. And thank you for coming.
Love you guys
Yeah.
too.
Aimee, do you and Matt want to get caught up on some super chats before we finish rounding up?
Yes, please, if I could.
Christ Puncher for Canadian $2 said, love this panel, heart emoji. Heart emoji. Crab Tequila for €5 said, being informed is better than staying in the dark. When we shine a light on such topics, we can help make things better. Like and subscribe for more. You should like and subscribe to me for more. Christ Puncher for Canadian $2 said, love you too, Ivy. Heart emoji.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you. And Aimee, since you have the floor, do you want to do your quick?
Yeah, sure. Like I said before, I'm just going to keep reiterating it. We seriously need some mental health, better mental health, in this country and everywhere else. It's, we also need to end that stigma. And parents, yes, if you see something in your child, try not to go into denial. Get them help immediately. If you do, you'll be better for it, as will they. And they will get the help that they need to help them lead productive and happy lives. Please do that.
Absolutely.
Don't ignore anything. I don't ignore anything, and Matthew is a happy, healthy guy, and there we go. It's just...
And I love eating pretzels.
Yes, he does. See, he's happy, So, don't ignore anything like that.
Right.
Talk to, and if it's an older person, talk to them,
Yes.
try to, get them the help that they need. Try at least, or talk to them even. And we really seriously do need much better mental health everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Jenni Morgan. Hello, lovely.
Hi. Ivy, after this, we usually hang around and decompress in the backstage. So hang around. This is a very, very nasty topic.
Yes.
It certainly is, just like everyone says, been around for a long, long time, all the way back to Tolstoy, as we've learned tonight. I certainly don't have the answers, but I certainly know we have to do something. What we're doing so far is not working. We're going to have to take another look at little things like constitutional rights in this country for something like this. I don't think this is going to lessen. I think this is only going to intensify as we become an apocalyptic nation with global warming and the nature of politics today. Things are not looking good. And although I'll be dead before it gets as bad as it will, I worry about all of you really much. And I hope we can do something. God Almighty, I hope we can do something. That's all I have. I'm sorry.
Thank you
It's okay.
so,
It's okay,
so
sweetie.
much.
It's okay, sweetie.
SciStrikeling. Hey, honey.
Hey. So, again, I mirror a lot of the sentiments that Aimee had said. Mental health is definitely the most important. And something else that I just want to point out is not to turn a blind eye. Something I found that kind of really disturbed me, not so much more than what these people did, but almost just as much, was this little, brief statement I'll just read out, where people had the Roger guy, the one that you talked about, Ellie. I'm sorry, Elliot. Sorry, I couldn't remember his first name. he had posted online just a few days before his killing spree, and somebody said on one of his posts, "Could someone tip off the police just in case?" And another asked why. And another, the third person commented, "Don't. Whatever happens, we didn't do anything, so just let it happen if it does." And I feel like that's just as bad and just as horrible for people to do. You can't do that. If there's something that you need to speak up against or that you're concerned about, don't just turn a blind eye. Don't say, "Well, I don't know anything. I'm just, I'm walking away from this." Because if somebody had said something, that it's possible that something could have been done ahead of time to prevent some of these, terrible things happening. And, I just want to make that point. No matter how you're related to the person, no matter where you're seeing it, if something like this comes up or you see something that disturbing that makes you question if you should get somebody involved, do it. And just, take care of each other, take care of friends, take care of strangers. You never know what anybody's going through. And it doesn't hurt anybody to be kind to somebody else. And I just think that needs to be at forefront of our minds.
Yeah.
And that's about all I have.
I completely agree. Thank you. Ashanti?
Exactly what she was saying. There's at least one person who had enough common sense to know that, hey, this is wrong. Maybe we should call the cops. Can you imagine how many lives would have been saved that day if they had notified the authorities that, hey, this guy may be violent? Their lives could have been saved that day. If someone had spoken up instead of just going, he's just shit posting, taking it seriously. Could have had more of an impact than them just brushing it off and saying, well, it's not us, it's one guy. They take refuge in our old idea of what these terrorism acts are. There's no such thing as lone wolves anymore. In the age of the internet and instant media and social connections, none of this happens in a vacuum. People are connected in a way that they weren't 20, 30 years ago. These ideas don't come from nowhere. So we have to stop thinking of it as, oh no, it's a game of whack-a-mole. How would we ever, deal with this? And as I was reading through that paper on violence and terrorism, it closed out with a really, really thoughtful quote. And I just want to read that because it kind of encouraged me, because it gave something tangible. What can we do? And it says, "There's nothing inherently wrong with a community of young people who have trouble finding love in relationships forming online support groups. But the ongoing vilification of a targeted group of other with extreme rhetoric and violent suppression presents a grave danger. It harnesses real sadness and frustration and turns it into hatred and focuses it in harmful directions. The best way to prevent incel terrorism, accordingly, is to undermine that ideology in the first place, rehabilitate and insulate them from new extremist ideas." So it's not wrong to look for help. It's not wrong to look for support. But distancing people from these ideas, that's a critical first step. Get help for your homies. If you don't like the way mental health sounds, get help for your homies.
Yeah. Okay, Glover Mommy. Hi, love.
Hello. I agree with whatever the whole panel said. I'm going to come at it from a parental standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
As a mom of children, I've always let them know, let it be known with them that I'm there if they want to talk, and thankfully they have come to me whenever they've had issues. This is another issue I believe that maybe some of these people didn't have. They didn't have, like we're saying, didn't have anybody to talk to. And I believe it started in the home first. And they didn't know probably how to go about it outside of the home. My opinion, I get, my speculation on my part, but I can only go out from what I have experienced. I mean, my son, he's had girlfriends, well, He had one girlfriend for 2 years. He's never had sex. He is a homebody. He stays on his computer when he's not at work. And, you know, he could have gone in that direction, and he never did, thank God. So be there. Just let other people know, other people you know in families, be there for your children. Let them talk to you. Let them come to you. Especially the boys. The boys are the hardest ones to want to come talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, but just be there and be an involved parent. That's another good one. Be an involved parent. I think that would make a world of difference with a lot of this issues we're having today.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I want to say a thank you to Bull. You've sat behind the scenes patiently. You've put together some amazing slideshow videos for the intro and the outro today. Thank you for your being a part of this show and for helping produce such a heavy topic. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to throw out there?
I just want to make it clear that mental health is what we need to focus on, people. It really is. There's nothing like it's, and it doesn't just apply to incels, but in general as a society. We need to really just, people with mental health issues or mental differences, as an example, because somebody brought up autism, they were just autistic. Well, that's kind of a heck of a generalization, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So once you throw it out there, you lost the argument. We need to actually figure out why they think this way and figure out how we can address that, and that's a mental health issue.
Right. Well, I'm going to do the last final thoughts. First of all, thank you so much, Ivy and Jenny. As always, Jenny, you were very lovely. You're always lovely to have on. Ivy, I am so sorry we dumped a pile of shit on you tonight, but sometimes I think it just comes, it comes with the territory sometimes of being on a show like this. You know, you find things that are not the most pleasant to talk about. And, but I love all of you so much. Aimee, I learned so much from you. Glover Mom, you were like my internet mom. And Vishanti, Ivy, SciStrikeling, you were like my sisters. And Jenny, you're like the aunt that I want to tell dirty things to, but, you know, not tell my mom. So each of you means something to me, and there is nobody else in the world I want to share this story with. It has taken quite a toll on me this week. So after tonight, I'm going to take a little bit of an internet break. But I think the biggest thing we need to talk about or look at is mental health. These are self-proclaimed incels or self-defining incels. But at the end of the day, let's be honest, this all goes back to mental health. And I agree with everything Aimee, SciStrikeling, Jenny, Vishanti, Glover, Mom, Bull, and Ivy have all said about that. That's what we need to look into is mental health and better mental health. With that said, I want everybody to take a moment and honor the victims. There are people who lost their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, let's roll it. And good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.